Good morning and welcome to AARP's Maryland's 2020 Census Forum. My name is Jim Campbell. I'm the Maryland State President for AARP Maryland. And I want you to know that we had more than 870,000 members in the state, and the 2020 census is one of our top priorities for the year. As you know, the deadline of September 30th for completion of the census is fast approaching. And our goal is to get all residents in the state registered or counted. At AARP, we have been getting calls, emails, Facebook comments from our members who have questions, concerns, or just want to know facts about the 2020 census. We will try to answer those questions today, and we have a great, outstanding panel of experts who can help us with that information. Today, you're going to hear from top leaders in the country at the federal and state government levels to discuss the importance of the census and how we can each have a role in achieving a complete and accurate count. To start things off, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Bishop Gary Roundtree Sr. He's the current president of the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Maryland Federation. Bishop Roundtree, we are delighted to have you and look forward to your reflections on the 2020 census.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bishop Gary Roundtree Sr. I am the current Maryland Federation President for North. I'm going to give a few reflections, and I'd like to begin with, over the next decade, lawmakers, business owners, and many others will use the 2020 census data to make critical decisions. The results will show where communities need new schools, new clinics, new roads, and more service for families, older adults, and children. The results will also inform how hundreds of billions of dollars in federal funding are allocated to more than 100 programs, including Medicare, Head Start, Black grants for community mental health and services, and the Supplementary Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP. The 2020 census will provide a snapshot of our nation, who we are, and where we live, and so much more. Thank you, and I turn this back over to Mr. Jim Campbell.
Bishop Roundtree, thank you so much for your reflections. We really appreciate that, and we really appreciate the support and partnership of NARPE. Thank you for joining us this morning. Now I'd like to turn to a friend of mine who works as a partnership specialist with the census, Lee Asbury. He's going to introduce the regional director for the census for us this morning. Lee, in addition to working for the census prior to joining the census, he was a 24-year veteran of the United States Air Force. So Lee, I want to thank you for your service and also thank you for your work on the census. We look forward to hearing the discussion this morning. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you for AARP and all of our different partners around the state. We're all committed to making sure everyone is counted. I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing your first guest speaker, which is Mr. Phillip Lutz. Mr. Lutz is the U.S. Census Bureau Deputy Regional Director in the Philadelphia region. He directs government statistics collection across 8 states and the District of Columbia. Mr. Lutz served as a field expert in the planning of the 2020 census. His research and testing led to new ways of conducting the 2020 census that improves both the quality of data and efficiency of field operations. In the 2000 and 2010 census, he served as the Assistant Regional Census Manager, managing dozens of field offices and more than 20,000 temporary employees in each census. He joined the Census Bureau in 1978. He has served as a field interviewer, geographer, statistician, and program manager. In the 1980s, he was on the team that created the first national computer map of the United States, a project that helped usher in the GIS industry of today. The 2020 decennial is the 5th national census he has worked, and he has received recognition by the Federal Executive Board for outstanding public service and numerous awards for his achievements. Mr. Lutz holds a BA in geography from the Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to your first guest speaker, Mr. Lutz.
Okay, thank you, Lee, and thank you, Lee, again for your service and for being supporting important organizations like AARP and our other partners around the states. Lee's one of about 20 partnership specialists that have had that role for the 2020 census just in Maryland alone. So we do appreciate your service. And Mr. Campbell, the one thing that Lee did not say is that I am an honored member of AARP as well. So glad to be here.
We're getting ready to set the membership.
Thank you. And AARP has been such a great partner, and that's why I'm so happy to be here today with you, with the senators who've also done a tremendous amount of work of outreach to help people respond and understand the importance of the census. I'm here with Secretary McCord and Lieutenant Governor Rutherford, who have also led the Maryland effort that we greatly appreciate, because one of the things that helps get an accurate census is when we have trusted voices like yourselves help educate and motivate the residents to respond and participate in the census. And that's half the battle right there. And I'm happy to say that as a result of the efforts you've been making, Maryland has had a higher response rate in general than the rest of the country. So congratulations on that. The state, I think last time I checked, had the 9th highest response rate in the country. I believe it was Carroll County that actually was one of the top counties in the entire country to lead in that response rate. So, so we do appreciate that. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about right now is what's happening now to make sure that those people who did not respond are participating. So as we speak, we did have a delay in conducting what we call our non-response follow-up operation, where we go knock on the doors of households that did not participate in the census due to the COVID-19 situation. We did have to take some steps to make sure that both our enumerators and the public can be enumerated safely when we go to the door. So we have issued our field staff face masks. We even have face masks that we can offer to the respondents to make them more comfortable in participating in the census. And so that was one of the things we wanted to make sure that we could do safely. And since then, beginning around early August, a few weeks ago, we did start the non-response follow-up to knock on the doors of households that did not participate. Now, one of the things I want everybody to understand about the response rate is there's a number of reasons that the response rate is what it is, what we're saying, and it actually could be higher than what we are reporting. So we get an address list from many sources, the Postal Service, from local governments, from building permits, etc. And we want to be over-inclusive. So by design, we keep addresses in our address list rather than purge any addresses, because we want to make sure that before we get rid of an address that may not exist, we have confirmation on that. So right now, we might be going to a place, a street location that's supposed to have 10 addresses there, but it turns out it was a permanent address and they haven't been built yet. So we're going to be deleting those addresses as we do our field verification. We also have to make sure that every address is located in the correct location, and so we have to do the geocoding. That's become so important for redistricting and other uses of the census data. So since we began in Maryland, we had I think it was about 900,000 addresses or so that we needed to knock on the doors. And then we just started that a few weeks ago. And already in just a few weeks, our army of about 6,000 temporary enumerators from every neighborhood has knocked on the doors of over 540,000 households to get contact. And that's almost a 60% of our workload in just 3 weeks. So we are well on our way of making sure that all households have an opportunity to respond. Now, when we do knock on the door, if no one's home, we leave what's called a notice of visit. And on that notice of visit, we'll have a control number that somebody can go online, or they can call a toll-free number with that control number that will identify their house, and they can still respond. And we actually are finding that even if we don't get anyone home and we knock on the door, they go online later that night or the next day or two, and they do respond, and therefore we don't need to knock on their doors any further. So I feel that we are well along the way of meeting our deadlines. We are supposed to finish our field operations by the end of September, and based on the data and the evidence that we've doing to date, we are well on our way to do so. I did mention we have about 6,000 temporary field workers right now just in Maryland, and we're still hiring and we're still adding more people on there. So if there's anyone here that's getting tired of sitting at home and they want to go online and apply to our jobs, please do so. So there's another group of people that don't live in homes that also need to be enumerated. These are folks who are in our long-term care facilities and other institutions, and we call those our group quarters. That also includes college dormitories, which has been a particular problem for us because of the dorms and schools shutting down right at the beginning of the census. Fortunately, we have actually already completed our group quarters enumeration as of a few days ago. And we were able to do so because in many cases, we were able to use administrative records that were available about the residents from administrators of these long-term care facilities or university housing offices. And we were able to use those records to make sure that people do get counted. So we were very appreciative of that. There's another group of folks, people that we still need to enumerate, and that's folks who use in what we call transitory locations, people that might live in recreational vehicle parks, campgrounds, migrant farm workers, and the homeless, people out on the street. And we will be enumerating those populations later on in September. And I know we have a long agenda, so I'd like to stop here if there's any time for questions, or I'll kick it back to you, Jim. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you one question. In Maryland, we're having a real problem with infections in our nursing homes. How are you counting that population that's in nursing homes?
So the nursing home would be included in what we call our group quarters population that I just mentioned. And we're able not to have to go to visit the residents or to create any safety issues and protection from COVID by going into the residents. So fortunately, we have been able to, over the phone and through administrative records and a secure website, administrators have been able to upload their resident information to our database, and we are enumerating them that way. And that operation has actually already been concluded.
Great, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Mr.
Thank
Lutz. Thank you. We're going to move on now to the federal government, and we are really honored that in Maryland we have some of the best representatives in the country. And I'm pleased and honored to have with us this morning Congressman Steny Hoyer. Congressman Hoyer is the current House Majority Leader and most senior Democrat in the United States Senate House of Representatives. Since 2003, he's been a ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives. He also serves as representative for Maryland's 5th District. And I have to mention one of his biggest fans helped organize this morning, Dr. Suda Haley. So we're really honored to have Congressman Hoyer with us, and I know he's going to talk about the census because he's been a big supporter. Congressman Hoyer, thank you. I hope. Is he there?
Unmute.
Oh, there he is. Congressman Hoyer, you're on mute. Mute.
Please unmute your microphone.
It's a microphone icon that currently.
I got it. You can hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Well, Jim, thank you. Pardon?
Could you hear my great introduction?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much for that effusive and discussion about the whole congressional delegation. Of course, there are 9 of us who share that view. You understand, our 2 senators and our 7 Democratic members of the House. We all share it's a great delegation.
Yeah.
And I understand, I think Ben and Chris are on here as well. Is
Yes.
that correct, Jim?
Yep.
Okay, well, I want to thank our state officials for partnering with AARP and NARF to host this very important meeting. I'm very concerned, as I know a lot of people are, with how we're going with the census. I was glad to see that we had, and I got in as he was speaking. One of the officials, I guess that was Phil Lutz from the Census Bureau, and I have a couple of questions I want to ask him. But I want to thank, as I said, AARP and NARF and others. Counting our people is so important that the framers knew it from the very beginning and included in the Constitution. AARP has been doing an extraordinarily effective organization when it comes to standing up for Maryland seniors and for the communities they work so hard to build and strengthen. And I want to thank you, Jim, and the whole team at AARP. I can't stress enough, and you can't either, and you are doing it very well, the importance of Maryland having an accurate count in the 2020 census. And we have an extraordinary challenge, as Phil pointed out, with COVID-19, the restraints it has on people's actions, the concerns it's raised in them. And then, of course, from my perspective, the president and the administration have done everything they can to undermine confidence in participating in the census. Of course, the Supreme Court held them accountable for that, but it's estimated that over $1.5 trillion in federal funding will be divided up based upon this census over the next 10 years. Now, $1.5 trillion is a huge sum of money, but as you know, in the HEROES Act itself that's pending and we're trying to negotiate, there's $3.4 trillion, and in CARES there was some $2 trillion. So we're talking about extraordinarily large sums, and the census is such a critical component of making those decisions accurately so the people for whom that money is intended, in fact, get that money. And the way they're going to do that is by being counted and knowing that they are there. Completing the census is going to be more challenging this year than in the past, as I said, because of the pandemic. To undercount communities they don't believe ought to share in the common resources of our country. The Constitution is very, very clear. Count every human being who is living in the United States. It's not about citizenship. It's not about this, that, or the other. It's about counting every person who is in the United States. The administration tried to rewrite the census in a way that discourages immigrants from participating, which was illegal, and the Supreme Court ruled against them. In August, they cut the census response period short 1 month and took away critical resources from those processing the data. We came up with extra money for the census and a substantial sum of money because we wanted to make sure that it was not resources that constrained the census in any way from accomplishing their responsibility. Marylanders have been returning their census forms and filling them out online at a pretty steady rate. And I'm proud that the 5th Congressional District is ahead of the rest of the state in returning our count. That surprised me. I was surprised that, very frankly, Jamie's district and David's districts were not ahead of us in Montgomery County, but that's what my staff tells me. But we're still at only a response rate of 72.4%. Obviously, we need to be at 100%. So if you haven't done so yet, as soon as this form is over, go to 2020census.gov and fill out your census form if you haven't already. I don't know how many people we have, Jim, on this. I
think it's around 200.
How many?
I think it's 200.
Well, what we need to do is have each one of those people contact 10 and have each one of those people they contact 10 and just ask people, have you filled out your census form? Because it's critically important. Our Maryland communities deserve their fair share of federal resources, just like every other community does, based upon who is there, who they are, and other critically important census data. I want to thank AARP, Maryland again for all its hard work and advocacy for seniors. Now, I'd like to ask Phil, if he's still on the line, a question. I am very concerned about the delay. I'm also concerned about shortening the time by a month for counting. I am particularly concerned there are a number of states who will be having elections next year and will have redistricting in their legislatures required for next year. And it is, I would hope that we would target those states who have early votes in the odd years and getting them the information they need to have appropriate redistricting statistics available to them. Mr. Secretary, do you know, I see your is back up.
I figured out how to do it.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, good, go ahead.
Okay, very good. First of all, Congressman Hoyer, thank you so much for everything you've been doing to promote the census and encourage people to respond. I don't have all the answers for you right now. I know that we have a field schedule to collect the data from households and from the group quarters by the end of September. And I have been told that will keep us on our mandated schedule for data distribution. The Public Law 94-171, which is the first data product for redistricting, is still scheduled to come out by April 1st of the year 2021. And we are well aware of every state's redistricting schedule, and we try to get the data out even earlier to give you some more time on that. But if I may, I'm going to have James Whitehorn from our redistricting office contact your office to make sure that the information I just gave you is still correct.
Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for that. Do we know whether Phil Lutz is still on the phone?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Hoyer. This is Phil Lutz. I'm using Rob's computer at the moment. So,
okay. It's confusing me. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature, but anyway, Phil, here's what I'm concerned about. I understand that, and for Maryland, you know, we're going to have an election in 22, so we can get information relatively late. Our legislature is in, and I know they would like to try to do it in 2021, but even if they did it early in 22, I forget when our primary is in 22. It's a presidential primary, so I presume it's early. It was scheduled to be in April this year, and we kicked it off till June 2nd. But whenever it is, we're not a state that's really, but I think Virginia obviously has odd years. New Jersey has odd years. There are a number of other states who have odd years, which means that 2021 will be an election year for them. In order for them to do their redistricting in their state legislatures, they're going to have to, from my standpoint, be prioritized. And I've written a letter to I think, I don't know whether specifically to you, with reference to prioritizing those states who had to have figures for redistricting in 21, can't wait for 22. Do you know whether that's being done?
So we, as I said, we actually work very closely as an agency with the National Conference of State Legislatures and their redistricting committee. We do have the schedule of the redistricting deadlines for every state, and our redistricting office works closely with them. So as I said, I can't answer your specific question with authority, but I can get to the right people in our agency who can. I'm here in the Department of Planning right now, which is responsible for receiving the redistricting data for Maryland, and maybe when Secretary McCord comes on, he may have some more information about that.
Well, Phil, thank you very much for that. If you could get me that, because I'll follow up on it. And I know the state legislature, as I say, I don't think it affects Maryland, but it does affect those states and therefore affects all of the nation, because those redistricting issues are going to be very, very important. And obviously the count is going to be critically important that we get it right, so that the districting reflects all of the people who live in various districts in various parts of the state. I'm very concerned because, frankly, I was not happy about about moving ahead to October 1 from October 30th or November 1st. I forget which it was. Very concerned about telescoping the time that you have to do the work. And I want to say that, as you know, I went to Suitland High School down the road. And we have a brand new census building that I worked very hard on and others worked very hard on. Those old dilapidated buildings that we had people working in were unacceptable. And now we have metro availability. It's a really good place to be, I think. And I've visited your building and visited your people. But unfortunately, I don't, the importance of the census is really not a reality in the minds of most people. But I will tell you, most members of Congress understand how critical the work you do. And people ought to understand it is not just the decennial census that they use. You are counting every month. And the figures that you put out to the business community and to others, critically important. So I would ask you to focus on making sure we get statistics accurately and we get them out in a timely fashion, particularly to those states that have to act early in terms of their redistricting. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
And
you,
thank
Mr.
you for your support with the census.
Am I gone now?
Hello.
I still see my picture. Am I still with you?
Ben
Yes,
Cardin.
you're still with it.
I don't see anybody else on my screen. That's why I asked.
Are we going
Yeah,
to, are we going to get any questions to the Census Bureau about coverage so far?
No, we're now to Senator Cardin. You still there, Ben? Hello.
Jim, you got us all on this new technology. We're all used to using
I
Zoom.
know. Learning is building the airplane as we fly it. Let's see. Oh, there he is.
There he
Good
is.
morning.
My friend
As I
Ben.
said,
Hi, Stenny. How are you?
Fine, Ben.
Good. By the way,
It's
Stenny,
my honor.
we have a delegation meeting on September 15th with the Census Bureau people. So we'll be able to drill down some of those questions with our delegation. We'll have a virtual meeting with the census people.
Bill, Ben, I know you share the concerns that I raised, but so you're right, we need to drill down on those, but unfortunately, September 15th is, pretty late in the game.
No question.
Ben, we can host it for you.
Yeah.
Let me introduce now. We're very honored that we have a great delegation, and you, of course, Congressman Hoyer is wonderful. And now my pleasure to introduce Senator Ben Cardin. Ben started his career in the Maryland legislature in 1967. He became Speaker of the House. I should know that because he was my Speaker for 8 years, Speaker Cardin. And then he went to the Congress and then, of course, the U.S. Senate. Just a great representative, an outstanding representative for our district. I know he's very concerned about the census and has been very active on the issue. And we're looking forward to having you with us this morning, Mr. Speaker and Senator. And we have some, well, I'd like you to go ahead and talk about the census, and then we'll have some questions when you're finished.
Sure. Well, Jim, first of all, Jim, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you. I really cherish the days that we served together in the Maryland House of Delegates. You did an incredible job representing the people of Baltimore. And congratulations on your position with AARP. They're doing super work in so many areas. And thank you for concentrating on the 2020 census. I agree with Congressman Hoyer in the challenges that we've had from the Trump administration in regards to census and so many other issues. But I want to make this clear. In Maryland, we are all united together to get a full count. Democrats, Republicans, federal, state, local officials were all working together in Maryland to encourage every person to fill out their census information. And Steny mentioned the fact that this is included in the Constitution and has a really strong history. Census was originally done so that the Crown could get its revenues from all the people under their territorial jurisdiction. That's why they did the census. But the founders of our country did it differently. They put it in the Constitution to count every person so that we had adequate distribution of common resources and that we had fair representation. It was done for the people, not for the monarch. And it's important that everyone complete their census information. It's every whole person. It's clear in the Constitution. The information is totally confidential as it relates to individual identifiers. It cannot be used by the property owner. It cannot be used by the government or tax or immigration. It's prohibited, and there are criminal sanctions for anyone who violates that confidentiality. So it's 100% confidential. It's used to help your community. It's right for you, but it's also for our community. It's to make sure we get the fair allocation of resources that come back to our community. If we have an undercount, we don't get that fair distribution of resources that are so desperately needed in our community. It is used for political representation. If we don't get a fair count, then we don't get our true representation. It's not just in the Congress of the United States, it's also in the state legislature and local governments. And as Steny pointed out, and as Mr. Lutz has pointed out, we have a deadline of September 30. Now, that can be changed. Congress has the ability to change it. The administration could have changed it. Originally, they did, changed it till October. They pulled it back till September 30. So we have to work under the assumption that September 30th will be the date. But we are trying to extend that date because we recognize we need more time because of COVID-19 to get all the information before us. So our message today, you're going to hear it from Senator Van Hollen, you heard it from Congressman Hoyer. Team Maryland is totally committed. And what we've done in Congress, we're proud of the role Maryland plays. The Census Bureau is located in Suitland, Maryland. We have provided $7.6 billion of funds in this budget year, so the Census Bureau has the resources to get the job done. Team Maryland has responded, and we need everyone working together to make sure everyone completes the census information. Yes, we expect those on the call have already done that, but check with your families, check with your neighbors, work with us. And as Mr. Lutz said, if you want to be a numerator, we still have time for employment. We've got to get this count right. Our state depends upon it. Your services, whether they be healthcare or education or housing, depends upon everyone completing their census information.
And as you and I know from our own experiences in state legislature and you in Congress, not only is the aid to states important, but also political representation depends on how many population. So, it could affect the state legislature next year. I'm sure they'll start that process in January. And of course, federal.
Absolutely.
Is the federal reapportionment done? It's done by the governor, is that right?
Yeah, federal reapportionment is done by the state legislatures. They reapportion the congressional seats, but it's done by the population on the census as it's reported by this census. So it will be used by the Maryland General Assembly to reapportion seats for the next congressional election. Not the one coming up in November, but the following one.
Okay. And I did have just a quick question or two questions for you. I think you answered one. What communities do you think we need to do greater outreach in trying to?
That's a great question. Remember, every person that doesn't get counted amounts to a loss of $1,800 per year. That there are numerous federal programs that depend upon the census numbers. And in Maryland, in FY16, which is the last year we have, it was $16 billion. So we're talking about a lot of money. So Mr. Lutz pointed out that Maryland's ninth in response rate, 69%. Well, that sounds good, but that means 31% of the people haven't been counted yet. That's a large number. And he mentioned Carroll County, and Carroll County is over 80%, but Worcester County is a shade over 30%. So we got to concentrate on those underserved communities. Baltimore County at 70.8% have responded, but Baltimore City at 54%. We've got to work in Baltimore City to get those numbers up. Baltimore City desperately needs those housing dollars and healthcare dollars. So, and community support dollars that are depending upon the count. So we need to concentrate on those communities that are generally underserved, and we must make sure we get to the hard to reach communities. Mr. Lutz mentioned some of those in non-conventional housing, those that are in community housing, our students, all of those are areas that we need to concentrate to get a better count.
You may have answered this before, but is it possible the Congress would extend the deadline?
Absolutely, Congress has the ability to do it. The House of Representatives has already passed legislation that would do that. When we return, and Congress return, the Senate returns on the Tuesday after Labor Day, the House returns a week later. We're going to be taking up a COVID-related response. We believe the census needs to be part of that response. So I do urge people to get civilly involved in this. Let's make the point that we need some additional time. Originally, the administration had until the end of October to get the responses in. That's a reasonable extension, and we're going to be fighting to do that by legislation. But make no mistake about it, we're going to have a challenge from the Trump administration. I know Senator Van Hollen's going to follow me, and he's been one of the great leaders on this issue, as well as the appropriation issues as it relates to the Census Bureau. So our team's going to work very hard in the Senate to do that. We have to work under the assumption that September 30th is the deadline. So let's make sure we get the information in as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you so much.
Jim, this is Tiger. I have a question. Yeah, I have a question. This is Tiger. Clarence Tiger. Dave.
Not right now, Tiger. Not right now. Sorry. Good to hear from you, though. We'll work something out. Next, we have on Senator Van Hollen, but I think he's on his way to the Marshall, Washington. He was going to try to call us by phone. We'll still keep it open. It's the 57th anniversary of the Martin Luther King Walk. I know several people are on their way. They're planning to go there today, and he was one of them. So we'll keep it open to see if he's able to get back to us, Senator Van Hollen. And now I think I'd like to go to the state government, and we have actually the second highest person in state government joining us today, Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford. Lieutenant Governor, are you there?
I am here.
Oh, it's working.
I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what happened. Yeah. No, I couldn't. Yeah, I know we let them know that you were on the line, but muted, and asked them to unmute your phone.
My phone is unmuted.
Yeah, he's fine. I'm good.
Yeah, whoever that voice is, I'm here.
Yes, I think we're good.
We understand the technology here and
First time I've really had a chance to meet you. We really appreciate you joining us. And I know you believe the census is important, and I'm just wondering, could you talk a little bit about the census and how important it is to the state of Maryland?
yeah, well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be on this virtual call to talk about the 2020 census. You know, it is something that is extremely important to us at the state level. We've been working hard through our Department of Planning. In particular, you're going to hear from Secretary McCord in a little bit in terms of the importance of the census to Maryland and making sure that all of our folks are counted. And we've been working over the last several weeks and months to encourage everyone that's in the state, every resident of the state, to answer and respond to the census. As you mentioned, as others have mentioned, it's important for the federal funding that comes to the state. I think Senator Cardin had just mentioned something like $1,800 a year per person in federal funding, and it supports such federal programs as Medicare and Medicaid, transportation, public health assistance, particularly in this time that we're dealing with the pandemic and the crisis associated with that, public housing, emergency planning, vaccines, and many critical life-saving programs that we're reliant upon. And so, all of this, as I mentioned, is especially important during this pandemic that we're dealing with. And so, we're very engaged at this moment, and we want to recognize the members of the Maryland local complete count committees that are out there working very hard to ensure that we get the responses, get people responding. We want to encourage more people. I think the senator mentioned Worcester County is one of the areas that we're looking at. The city's a little lower than what we'd want it to be. I actually sent a text to the mayor this morning asking for his assistance and thanking him because in the last week or so, they've had people, the city has had people out on the street encouraging people to respond to the census. I thank Montgomery County's executive, Elrich, for meeting or exceeding their 2010 numbers. So we're encouraged with many of the counties, but some of the other facility or other jurisdictions need a little bit more of a push. And I'd also ask our federal representatives to use their contacts, their email lists, their mailing lists to encourage their constituents to make sure that they are getting that information out.
Great. Thank you so much. I just had a couple of questions. I was wondering, how do you see the state's role, I guess when the census information is done and collected, part of the role being the redistricting process? I guess you'll be working administration, the legislature on the redistricting of the state districts, legislative districts.
Right. Once we get that census data back, the governor will submit a plan to the legislature in terms of redistricting, reapportionment, both for the state officials as well as the congressional delegation. Then the legislature will work on their plan or our plan. We'll work together to come up with something that is reflective of the state's population and making sure that everyone is being represented appropriately. We've had some challenges, as you know, and there's been criticism of particularly our congressional map, and many of those districts have strange shapes to them, I'll put it that way. And so we want to make sure that they're more reasonable and they reflect the content of the community.
What is the deadline for getting that finished? Is it by the end of the legislative session?
Well, I don't know if it won't be probably the end of this upcoming legislative session, because it's not likely we'll have all of the census information back at that time. But I would say before the beginning of the next legislative session. In previous years, the legislature has come back in special session to pass a new map. And so it's quite possible we'll have the same thing probably this time next year or in September of next year.
Okay. And then one last question. Essentially, what is the state's role in the census? Do we provide funding or staff?
Well, and as I mentioned before, through our Department of Planning, who's our lead agency, we're promoting it through social media, through television, broadcast information, getting it out to as many people as possible. We do bring on staff to try to encourage the additional people to get out there and take the census. But a lot of it is our encouragement of making sure that we get a full count as complete as possible. And it has been a priority of the administration, particularly with challenges associated with the pandemic, but making sure that everyone is counted so that we can get a fair share of our federal resources.
Senator Governor, thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us this morning. Very helpful. Good to know.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for all that you're doing.
Great. And we'll keep in touch. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I'm going to move now to Secretary McCord of the Planning Department. If he's available, Secretary McCord has been with the Planning Department since 2015 and 22 years experience in local government experience. Secretary McCord, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear. I can't see you yet, but I can hear you.
All right, let's let the guy in the control booth take care of that one.
By the way, Senator Van Hollen notified us that he's involved in this, getting to this march and marching in. He had hoped to call in, but he doesn't have reception yet on his phone, so we're still standing by on that. Anyway, we're glad to have Secretary McCord here. He's going to talk about what the state's been doing in the census. I met with them early on. They're doing a great job. So, Secretary McCord, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. We appreciate your partnership, the partnership of the AARP. That's important because partnerships are what we're all about here. Let me just comment a little bit further on Garrett and Worcester County. There's a lot of secondary homes that won't really have a year-round resident in it, so their numbers get a little skewed because of that. When we report those numbers on our website, you'll see a little adjustment based on those two counties because of the secondary homes. We try to take the secondary homes out of the equation there. So they're not doing as bad as it looks on the general websites. Check the Maryland website for that. We also have $5 million worth of grants program. The Census Grants panel money has gone out to nonprofits and local governments to help this effort. And there are lots of organizations. There's more than 30 some organizations that are using this money to try to drive the response rates here. 80% of the money went to 80% of the population where the population centers are. And we're particularly focused on hard to count areas. In Maryland, the response rate is 69.1%, the self-response rate as of yesterday. And but it's 15.7% worth of enumeration that's happened. So the federal partners are doing their job in Maryland. And so we literally have an 84.7% response rate of total enumeration as of yesterday. So we've got 15% more to go. We are not going to stop until we get to September 30th. Our job is to count everyone. We've never wavered from that commitment to count everyone. So our most effective tool in this process has been the partnerships. We know that people respond better to their trusted leaders in their communities. We work with elected officials, faith leaders, work with nonprofits, community groups, and we try to get every Maryland to respond. I mean, we've worked with each of the complete count committees. They get a report from the Department of Planning every week that shows the 5 trailing census tracts in their county. So they know where the tracts are, the number of people in the tract, the number of households in the tract, and the characteristics of the people in those tracts. It's not something we put on the website. We're not trying to try to make a big deal about it, but we're making sure the people that are making the difference in those communities have the best information possible. And so we're partnering safely with local groups and organizations at events, wherever we can do that, wherever that's possible, we're doing it. The trusted leaders, they deliver that message the best. And we've had toolkits on the website we've updated for faith leaders across the state, a toolkit for their use in talking to their congregations. We did the same with leaders of the business community and the nonprofits. And we've just updated a toolkit for elected officials and sent it to every person that's a member of the General Assembly and all the local government leaders. So we're encouraged by the response that we've received. I wrote back in early June to the Census Bureau to make sure that Maryland was within the first set of states to receive the data for census, because we are one of those states that has redistricting upon us, and we're also a state that has to reallocate the prisoners to their last known address but prior to incarceration. So we're one of only 9 states that has that requirement. I detailed that to the U.S. Census Bureau and put the plea in to get our numbers before any other state's numbers, because we have an extra piece of duty to do to reallocate the prisoners before the numbers can be used for redistricting. So that letter went out June 8th to the Census Bureau. I've written to the Census Bureau every time I've had a concern. I've had nothing but good response from the Census Bureau. So the federal partners have been good partners from my perspective. But being number 9 in the nation, that's no small accomplishment, especially when you consider the other states above Maryland have not had the same COVID challenges that Maryland has had. We've not wavered from that commitment. A complete account as possible remains our goal.
So that healthcare, to highways, meals, Medicare, the census impacts every aspect of our lives. At this point, I would say we need you to respond because we need your family in the picture to reflect what each community really looks like. It's about, not just about you, it's about us. But we need you and your family to be counted. It's not just about today, it's about 10 years worth of tomorrows. Your personal information protected by law, not shared with any other agency. But the data in general is the support for your critical programs and services. That's the government, business, house of worship, nonprofits, all these entities that serve you need accurate information to provide their services. So the census is about numbers, but informs other numbers that are critical, like the number of fire trucks, the number of classrooms, the number of hospital beds, the number of vaccines. Our message has been come to your senses and now changes to this last month to don't delay, respond today. So I am living and breathing census at the grocery store, at the gas station, and everywhere I go. And when people tell me that I don't even know, hey, I filled out my census form, my response is get 5 other people to fill it out also. So I'm continuing to spread the message, and all of our local partners are doing everything they can to spread the message.
We have about a month left before the end of the census count, September 30th. What do you think are the biggest obstacles, and would you like to see extended another month or so?
Those things are not necessarily under our control at the state level. So I've asked everybody in the Department of Planning to make sure they stay focused on what we can control. So the deadlines, whether they move, that's not I'm concerned about it, but I can't control it. So I ask my people to stay focused on what we can control. We can control going to events. We can control loaning out tablets so people can respond after church. We can have a person there with a mask helping people to fill out their form as long as we have census people there with us. We are trying to do everything we can based on the things that we can control. I would like to have as much time as possible, but I know what I can't control, and I know that I need to encourage people to focus on what they can control.
In Maryland, just a quick question. I'm not sure you're the right person to ask, but we've had the problem with nursing homes. Have we been able to overcome that in terms of counting nursing home residents?
That's their institutional counts that they're not really part of the state's responsibility. So Mr. Lutz would probably be easier to respond to that question.
Okay. Well, thank you. Let me just check. Thank you. That's it. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate your coming on this morning and spending time with us.
Jim, thank you very much. I appreciate everything that you are doing to help the senior population, to help the people that we depend on to make sure that civic duty is taken care of. Thank you very much, Jim.
Well, it's really important to AARP, and we want to do all we can to help you. So we appreciate your help and support. And let us know if we can do more. Thank you. And now I was going to introduce a friend of mine who's also Secretary of the Maryland Department of Veteran Affairs, George Owings. Is George still around?
I'm here, Jim.
Have you figured out that computer?
Pretty much. My only problem is I went and bought a brand new suit for this event today, and my camera doesn't work, so that's okay.
Oh, gosh. Well, we are delighted to have you with us. We know you've been the secretary, but you also are a colleague of mine in the House of Delegates for 10 years. So it's great to have you on the line with us this morning, because we know you're very concerned about veteran affairs and the veterans and making sure the veterans are counted. And we also have a big friend of yours on the line, Dr. Suda Haley. She's always talking you up about how great a job you're doing. So we really appreciate you, George. What can you say about the veterans and the census?
Well, I want to thank you, Jim. I also want to thank John Coleman, and I want to give a shout out to Jenny Plummer-Welker of Calvert County. I think she's co-hosting this or hosting it, but in any event,
I was going to get to that.
Yeah, in any event, let me just say this. If any department in state government relies on the census, it is the Department of Veterans Affairs. We serve 380,000 veterans in this state. But I want you to listen as I briefly go through some of my comments here, the times that you hear the word census. So for more than a year now, of course, as we all know, all the counties, the state, the local municipalities, the city, and everybody else has been working very hard on the census because of the valuable information that is contained therein, the development of policy, new programs, and budgets. Now, nobody is working harder than we are. For over a year, our department has been sharing the information about fill out the census on our electronic newsletter, social media, face-to-face with the veterans we encounter at different things. And in fact, for those of you that are signed up to our newsletter, you'll find that on there again today. If you're not on there, it's very simple, maryland.veterans.gov. Thank you for joining up. We use the census data to gain and to guide outreach, to predict program utilization, to prepare for the future. And I'm going to very quickly go through the various programs, but I want you to please, again, pay attention to how all the data affects our veterans. And as I said, the mission is to ensure that we are absolutely there for all of our uniform. Now there's 8 uniformed services who are entitled to benefits that they've earned. There are 5 core programs. The Outreach and Advocacy program is the tip of what we call the 5 points of the star. It's a 2-staff member program, and it's responsible for finding and educating veterans and dependents on the VA benefits. Census data provides that information on socioeconomic and health characteristics of the veterans and is invaluable to the outreach program. The Service and Benefits program assists the veterans and their dependents with applications to the United States Department of Veterans Affairs for disability compensation, pension, aid and attendance, and all of the other programs. The census data helps guide where the service officers are located, and it is our responsibility, therefore, to ensure access to the services and the needs are met for these veterans. Charlotte Hall Veterans Home, which has been in the news lately, and that's under control now, but nonetheless, it's located in St. Mary's County. It's one of the larger of the veterans homes in the country, of the 162-bed unit homes. It's a 450-bed assisted living and skilled nursing home for the veterans and their eligible spouses. The department uses the census data to predict future need for this type of living. And in fact, we are in the process now of acquiring the land for a second veterans home. And the reason I point that out is because without a proper count, when the VA starts looking at us for a share of that money for that second home, which is a 65-35 split, we need every single person, not just the veteran, but we need every single person in this state counted. And the reason is, as you heard from both Senator Cardin and the Lieutenant Governor, the amount of money that's lost is $1,821 a year, or $18,000 plus in 10 years. So it's critical that everybody be counted. So as we turn towards that second home, we will be in good stead. We use the density data to determine the best location when we're planning for that home. Fourth is our Department of Cemeteries and Memorials. We operate one of the busiest state cemetery programs in the nation with our 5 state-owned and operated cemeteries. 100,000 veterans and or their dependents have been interred so far, and we're committed to providing a final resting place for those who served and sacrificed. The democratic data pulled from the census helps the cemetery program plan for expansion, and interment needs. We also, in the same department, manage the 4 veteran memorials and a share of the Baltimore City War Memorial Building. Lastly is the Veterans Trust Fund, and who could know or even begin to guess how great the need would be until COVID-19 struck. But we're ready for it. We prepared for it. Some years ago, we established the Maryland Veterans Trust Fund, and it was to help veterans in a variety of ways, but most often with eviction prevention assistance. Again, who could predict how valuable that program would be? As reported in the American Community Survey, the overwhelming majority of the veterans in Maryland live above the poverty level and receive a good, a good salary. But you never know when you're going to fall on hard times. So very quickly, that kind of sums up what the five programs are. But it is so important that everybody get out here, and it's like Stanley or Ben, one of them said, go out and find 10 people and let those 10 find 10 and know it. The Department of Veterans Affairs could not survive without our fair share of the VA budget, which comes out of Department of Defense. This year it's $243.3 billion, and of course that goes to 50 states and 4 territories. Thank you, Jim.
George, thank you. Appreciate it. Can you hear me, George?
Yes, sir.
Jim, you did a great job. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning. Thank you so much. I did want to take this few moments here to thank the people that made this possible. A lot of work went into this, and I'm just the face of it right now, but a lot of people did a lot of work over a couple months. And I want to start with, as George mentioned, Jenny Plummer-Welker. She's with Calvert County Government, a planner. She did a great job, as did our Suda Haley, another planner, forum co-coordinator. She's with AARP's Executive Council, and NARPE Vice President, and the Complete Count Committee in Calvert County. So thank you for those two for coordinating this event. John Coleman, Public Information Officer for Maryland Department of Planning. John, thank you so much. Nancy Carr, Associate State Director of Communications. She's with AARP. Nancy did a great job this morning. John Watson, Census Outreach Coordinator for the Department of Planning. Sarah Eggman, Public Information Manager for Calvert County. Ruth Davis-Roger, Calvert County Government Planner. And the Tri-County Council, who helped make all this possible. So we really appreciate everybody's involvement and support. It was just a great program. AARP, as you know, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan social mission organization. We're fighting for you, and we're working on this census. We're here to support the 50-plus population, and this morning was really a great effort in that whole goal. So thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it, and have a good day. We'll see you.